everydayfan.com podcast. Today we're talking NBA with Paul Casanova, Liam Sagarian, and Mr. Dan Savage. How are you fellas doing today?
We are great. Okay, thanks, Jack, do it again. All right, but today we have a very special guest, Dan Savage from the OrlandoMagic.com. He is the digital media director, if I'm not mistaken, of the Orlando Magic.
I'm director of digital news and one of the writers covering the Orlando Magic.
Head writer. And very good writer by the way. If anybody hasn't taken a look at his stuff on the NBA.com, the OrlandoMagic.com, very good stuff. Steal everything from him. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna have to make you my hype man.
Yeah, there you go. Give me one of those chains with the, All right. So Dan is basically, if I'm not, here's what I'm gonna let you go ahead and tell us about yourself a little bit, Dan. But I got a couple of things for you too. I know, if I believe, because if you felt like somebody's been stalking you lately, then it's a go with your gut instinct, because that's been me. But if I'm not mistaken, you are from New York. New Jersey area, right around in there, right?
Yeah, no, I grew up in New Jersey. I spent some time working in New York up until the start of the 2008-2009 season, when I came down to join the Orlando Magic, and been in Orlando ever since. So, originally a Northeast native, and now enjoying the sunny weather down here in Florida, and not having to shovel snow anymore.
Did you hear that, guys? Two Pennsylvania guys.
That's how making it sounds like to me.
And
this is the time of the year it pays off to be up north. We start getting hot. Like, our summer is like your winter. In summer here, you don't want to be outside. Winter up there, you don't want to be outside. Really making it is being a snowbird and having a spot in two places so you can enjoy the luxuries of both areas.
Can you say that a little bit slower? I'm taking notes, Dan.
Jack is on his way to Florida, though. He will be here soon, so he's going to start living the life. He's going down there with all them South Florida people, though. So
I'm excited.
I don't know what he's going to turn into after that, but
hopefully not a Heat fan.
Exactly. Liam, you ever plan on coming down, man? You're stuck up there in Pennsylvania. You love it up there.
I mean, I definitely do love where I'm from, but hey, wherever I can find myself a job, you know what I'm saying?
So Dan, you did you not work for the NBA.com though before you went to the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, correct. So coming out of school, I worked for CBS News Pass Sports in New York City for about 2 years, and from there transitioned, worked for NBA.com, and spent about 2 to 3 seasons with them. They were moving their operations from the New York, New Jersey area with Turner Sports down in Atlanta. So I was going to have to move anyway. Otherwise, I'd have probably stayed there for quite some time. But with that move, I started looking around at some different teams and opening with the Orlando Magic. And, at that time, it was a very exciting opportunity. They were, Dwight Howard was just coming into his prime. They had added Rashard Lewis. Hedo Turkoglu was there, Jameer Nelson. So, I hopped on the train, and my first season there, the Orlando Magic go to the NBA Finals. So I like to take a lot of credit for that.
There you go. Was that I don't want to sound like a negative, but was that not the best year from the time that you've gotten there?
That time, that run to the finals was one of the most exciting times. The interesting part was that midway through that season, Jameer Nelson got hurt. And internally, it felt like that was a big blow. Like, maybe they'd get into the playoffs, get past a few rounds, but without Jameer, it was going to be very difficult to, make a finals run. But, they added Rafer Alston. And the interesting part about that season is the belief just kept building round by round. So, they were in some trouble that first series against Philadelphia. If Hedo Turkoglu doesn't knock down that game winner, they could have been in some serious trouble that series. But they get that, he hits that shot, and that felt like the momentum shifted and really gave the team a lot of momentum. And so then, they go up against Boston, win a game 7 there, and then it was like, okay, were starting to really believe. And then they had a lot of success against Cleveland, over the course of the regular season. And, going in there, getting game one, they should have had game two if LeBron doesn't hit that crazy buzzer beater that we still see on NBA TV all the time.
Awesome shot.
And then, they just basically romp the Cavs and give themselves a chance going against the Lakers. And, a few bad breaks here and there, they end up losing. But that season was fun because it was almost so unexpected. The rounds just kept coming and the belief kept building. For me, the most fun season was the next season, the 2009-10 season, when they added Vince Carter, Hito left. Because it felt from the start of the season all the way through that this team had a legit chance to win the finals. Now, ultimately, they lose to Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. But you look at those first two playoff series, they swept the then Charlotte Bobcats and the Atlanta Hawks by a record margin. No team had ever won a playoff series by such disparity. So, through the first two rounds of the playoffs and through that regular season, they felt like a dominant team. And so that season was a lot of fun because just from start to finish, it felt like that team had a chance to win the NBA Finals.
Probably like a lot of people, I didn't live in Florida at the time, and that was the team that caught me for the Magic, who I don't know if you want to say introduced me to the Magic, but where I first started to literally follow the Magic was during that time period. And I loved all of them guys. Jameer Nelson, when you said his name, I mean, it gave me those flashbacks. That guy, I loved the way he played basketball, like killer guy. What I don't think a lot of people understand, like when you got there though, the digital part, there wasn't very much, right? I mean,
yeah. Well,
if I'm not mistaken, though, aren't you like almost responsible for the Twitter of Orlando Magic and MySpace?
A lot of launching of digital products. You have to go back in time because now every team throughout sports takes digital very serious. From when I got hired, it was, basically a staff of, one or two people. And, there were other responsibilities attached to it. And now, you look at just how many different areas of content there are within an organization. So, I was part of the, launch of the Twitter platform, along with a number of other social media platforms. But now, we have a whole team dedicated specifically to social media. We have a whole team dedicated specifically to video. We have, my group, which is specifically dedicated to OrlandoMagic.com and written content. So, it's just crazy how it's grown over the years, to see it from that point. And I remember when I joined the team, it was like, okay, you're going to create content for the website. We were, one of the few teams that were really dedicated to creating content internally. Now it's taken for granted, but that was kind of the evolution as you see it over time, is that every team going from maybe just having one person, which was like a luxury, to now there's whole teams and with various departments dedicated to specific types of content. So it's really grown since, I hopped on with the Magic in 2008, 2009. And, each year it seemingly reaches new heights when you look at the digital numbers across the NBA, across the teams, across the great innovation throughout sports. It's just amazing year over year, the progress that continues to be made.
I can imagine the way social media has grown and the way those accounts have grown. When we talk about that, though, like you talk about, you are mainly responsible for the content that goes out on the OrlandoMagic.com, but that's a lot of stuff. So, and not only that, but you have to be in coordination with the team itself. Otherwise, that would be kind of a juggernaut thing. So, tell us a little bit. Like how you work with the front office, with the players, to make sure that the concept, I wouldn't say like the message, because we all know that a team, we got to put out that right message. So
yeah, no, definitely. And so that's kind of how a lot of the ways that myself, Josh Cohen, you read, you see his stuff all over OrlandoMagic.com. It's kind of the way we approach it. We work very closely with our PR department, with our social media department, with our video departments, all working hand in hand. And the story we like to tell is the story of the team, where the outlet, to express how they're seeing things, whether it be Coach Clifford or Jeff Weltman, and giving, that direction and sounding board a voice. So we work, very closely with that. Obviously this season's been interesting because we're a little bit more at a distance than, normally would be. Normally Josh Cohen and myself, we split up the road trips 50-50.
Oh, that's good.
On the team plane, we're in the hotel, we're traveling. We're in the practices. We have, a good sense, a beat of everything that's going on. But this particular season, we're like everybody else. We're on Zoom calls and,
twice a day, every other day.
Yeah, exactly. So, so you feel a little bit more I would say this season's a little bit tougher because, I've never personally met Cole Anthony face to face. Normally I would have, met a rookie a million times already. They'd be sick of seeing my face. But as of now, I'm just like a little box on Zoom, like everything else. So it would be tough enough already, but it's especially tough to get, people to open up and tell those stories in a season where there's been so much turnover. Because like I said, while somebody like, Nikola Vucevic, he's been, working by my side for 9 straight seasons, knows me, knows I'm going to give him, a fair chance to tell his side of things. But for a lot of the new guys, they have a hard time differentiating, where you are, so to speak. So that's been the interesting part of this particular season, feel a little bit more distant in terms of that. But like you said, it's a lot of working, a lot of talking with different departments, spend a lot of time in meetings, having those conversations, talking about, different ideas, different stories to cover, just for example, we've had meetings today talking about the big vaccine event that'll be taking place at Amway Center tomorrow.
That's right.
Give the opportunity I think it's close to 3,000 people will have the opportunity to be vaccinated at the Amway Center. So, those types of things as they're coming down the line, we meet about it, talk about it. What are the major points we want to hit? Who are we talking to? Et cetera, and really try to put that out there.
Let me ask you a question though. When you're doing this in a season such as this one, where we started off 4-0, best start ever, and then all of a sudden with those injuries, we just watched it one by one, and then the season just kind of went down, especially after that trade deadline. We knew what was going on. We knew. How do you coincide with trying to keep that message from the team with what fans, are shouting about,
Yeah, no, and that's where the balance comes. One of the things that's been great about working with this front office and Steve Clifford is they're very honest. Steve Clifford, you've listened to his post-game press conferences. There's no sugarcoating anything. And so that's, I think, what's appreciated.
I love the guy.
Like in a position like myself, normally you have to go and fight for honesty and say, hey, my journalistic integrity's here. I'm not going to, say something is one thing when it's really another thing. But the good part about Jeff Weltman, Steve Clifford, et cetera, is that they're very clear cut. There's no, sugarcoating anything, tell it like it is. And that's when you have accountability, that's how a team gets better and makes improvements. So Steve Clifford holds his guys accountable. And that's great for us on our side of things, because like you said, in a season like that, it could be very difficult working with a team if they want to, put rose-colored glasses over everything. But Steve Clifford, is very clear, along with the front office, about, being honest and holding things accountable and talking about the direction of where this thing's headed and how they want to get there.
I appreciate that from Cliff, and I love listening to Cliff talk, especially after one of those games when you see his face and he's coming in, and sometimes he says those one-liners and then he's out. Those days, I love those days. Those are killer. I got 2 more before I'm going to unleash the beast on you over here, but one more is when doing this too, and you spend so much time with the players, so much time with the front office, all that, you have to have some of the craziest stories ever, especially as long as you've been there. I mean, you have been there, what, to 12 years? 13?
Yeah, probably about 12, about
12, 13?
Well, you'd look, it's like about 13 years, like maybe 13 or 14 seasons. I forget. It's always longer in seasons than it is in years.
True. Yeah.
Every time,
You've had to seen some crazy stuff, though. You have to have seen some crazy stuff, especially with Vince Carter, with Dwight. I mean,
yeah. I'll start off with the Vince story because he's one of my favorites. He was one of those, guys that fell. His career was long enough that, I actually grew up a fan of his, especially being in the New Jersey area. And then, he lasted long enough to make it where I was working and covering him. So to get him there, I remember it was, I think the summer or early in the season that he first got there, probably about 2009. And Dwight Howard had said to me, I'm going to give you something for SportsCenter. And he was sitting down about like 80 to 90 feet away from the basket, like opposite free throw line, sitting on the ground and just heaving balls at the opposing basket. And like Dwight is so strong that he's making this like impossible shot look like really easy. And they're like flying over the hoop. They're all, misdirected. And Vince comes walking by as I'm filming with then like, you'd film on your iPhone or with a, really expensive camera now. Like our video department has all this, crazy stuff with all the highlights you probably, end up seeing that our social media team disseminates, etc. But like, at the time I'm like with one of those flip cameras and, sitting down and Vince Carter comes walking by and he's like, "What are you doing?" Like, and I'm like, "Dwight's sitting here, trying to hit this shot. And, give me something for SportsCenter." So Vince is like, "Let me try." So he sits down and he throws one. And then he kind of does like this mathematical precision in his head. Well, I was just off by a little bit here. Second time, picks it up from like 86 feet out, I think is what we calculated. Heaves it up and it's a swish. And I've got it, on camera. And I'm like, holy cow.
Nice.
Post it to orlandomagic.com. It goes everywhere. And, I tweeted it out on my personal Twitter account. And next thing you know, I'm getting a call from First Take. And they're like, we're debating because the ball actually left the sight line of the camera when it went down.
Was it real?
Whether or not it was real or not. Like, could somebody actually do this? So I had to actually go on there. Skip Bayless was still on, First Take at the time and debate him about the fact that it was, a real shot. So that's the cloud of having a team and that coming off of finals and it has Vince Carter and somebody of his stature on it is that, even somebody like me could end up on First Take.
In front of Skip Bayless, right? All right. The last one for me.
That's my dream.
Yeah.
That's how amazing that when they really say Mr. Half Man, Half Amazing, that's how amazing Vince Carter is that he could get a guy like me on First Take.
Oh my God.
In his second take.
That is incredible. That is incredible.
The last thing from me, and then we'll move on, but I like to bring up a little bit of some things in the past, maybe that you might have wanted to forget. But I like to just pop it on to everybody every now and then. But I don't have this piece to show you on the screen, so I'm very upset. But you guys, we are also sitting with not only a basketball guru, but a guy who can give you love advice if you'd like to. Mr. Dan Savage took over for a guy that works in Orlando Sentinel.
No, he's actually like nationally syndicated. I'm trying to remember where he is. I know one of his big papers was in Seattle, but I know he's national. He's not actually based here in Orlando, although his stuff is syndicated in the Orlando Weekly.
So his name is also Dan Savage, but he was a love columnist who gave love advice or sex.
Yeah, a lot of love advice, like all kinds of things. So the crazy part was when you kind of have to rewind a little bit. Before Twitter even issued verifications, everybody kind of had equal weight. There was no blue check mark, next to somebody's name. even then bios were, you know, a little limited, etc. So when Twitter first started, there were people who would confuse me with the you know, love, sex advice guy, and weird tweets, you know, sent to me, and I would be like, I don't know how to respond to this, and you know, I would forward them along to him, and you know, he got a kick out of it. And so, you know, sometime later, he said he was taking a vacation, and he's known throughout you know, the history of social media that me and several other Dan Savages have received questions intended for him that, you know, they have no business taking. So while he was on vacation, would I answer him? And I said, well, I've seen some of the stuff you get, and I'm not comfortable in my position, you know, with an NBA team answering some of that stuff. So you got to give me like the G-rated question, you know, the love advice questions, that kind of stuff. And so he sent me 64 questions, and mind you,
Wow.
of the G-rated stuff he got, I had to filter it down quite a bit to get to like 4 or 5 that I was comfortable answering. And you know, I filled in for him, and I tried to give love advice from, you know, as if our paths, the lines had been crossed. And I was also answering him from like a basketball perspective. So, you know, there's some cheesy, you know, basketball puns with, you know, tied in with love advice. But, you know, hey, the basketball court's all about relationships and building relationships with the other people next to you. So, you know, it's not too much of a stretch.
Are you married, Dan?
Tie it to love. So that's another crazy thing that, you know, this game's give me an opportunity to do is cross paths with the you know, Dan Savage of love advice.
Are you married?
I am, yes.
Maybe we should get your wife on here to see if you know, if you should continue that kind of a no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my wife has more important things. She actually like studies you know, drugs and you know, other things as they're coming to market, experimental drugs. So as you could imagine, in this like post-COVID world where, you know, they're doing drug trials and testing vaccine efficiencies, she's like meetings throughout the clock as she studies this stuff and the accuracy and, you know, and holding people accountable for, you know, the accuracy and effectiveness of these things. So
wow, nice.
Yeah, she does like real work where she's like curing cancer and major diseases, and I'm out here watching basketball. So
I'm sure she tells you that too, don't she?
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting juxtaposition in the Savage house.
Liam, Jack, somebody want to?
So this was the first thing I said, or the first thing I wrote down when you started talking, Dan. I wrote Dan Savage. He really loves it. And I didn't mean for, I had no idea what stories you were going to tell. It was just we don't know each other. It was my first impression of you. You seemed glowing when you were talking about the game. You seemed like you really, Dan Savage, it seems like you really love it. Like you really feel, after all this time.
Yeah, no, it's an addiction. Like, you know, if I was gone from the Magic tomorrow, like I'd still be going to high school sports, covering it, you know, trying to do whatever. Like when I'm on the road, it's like I'll look to see if there's, you know, a game of something going on that I could catch, if there's a basketball park nearby that I could play at, take a photo. You know, Josh Cohen's a fellow addict, so it's great working with him. We shared paths at NBA.com, and he's a fellow junkie. So when we had an opening here, he was one of the first people that I called because I just know that he loves it too. And I know if we were to like prank, you know, Zoom call him right now, he's sitting at a TV watching NBA action. Like I am just 100% sure of it. And the room I'm in right now, it's undergoing some construction, but like I have 3 TVs that are being put up on this wall for the sole purpose that I could watch multiple League Pass games at once. So yeah, you're on a bit. Like I'm addicted to it. You know, I work for basketball, and in my free time I watch basketball. So a little lopsided.
my impression is that you would do it for free. Miss Savage would not like it so very much if you would just give away your free time to basketball. But that's my impression. And you said it was better to have the personal relationship with the player. It's better to have that kind of handshake already put away, that face to face. That way you've already met the person before. It's kind of tough doing this, like the way you put it so eloquently, person in a box.
Yeah. No question. Because I think, all people want to be, whether it's basketball or just life, is just treated fairly. I don't think anybody has a problem. These guys have been, examined and picked apart their entire lives. Now it gets earlier and earlier because I feel like they're putting scouting grades on kids in fifth grade nowadays. So I think the main thing that players want is just to be treated fairly. So when you have the opportunity to talk to them, explain what you're doing, how you're doing it, and you're doing it face to face, and they see you there every day as somebody, who's flying alongside them, traveling with them, you build that relationship and that level of trust that, hey, I'm going to give a fair and balanced side of this. I'm going to give you your side of this. I'm going to allow you to tell your story as well. That goes a long way. So to be at a distance in this type of season does make things tougher, but it also makes it for an interesting challenge, and, as somebody who's done this for a long time, it is fun to have new challenges and new ways of doing things. But yeah, next season I'm ready to get back to normal.
Go ahead, Liam.
So I'm going to tell you what, when I get down to Florida, I will promise you I am going to be an Orlando Magic fan. I'm going to tell you why, because I like teams that grow themselves organically. I really do I like the draft process. I like that the coach is involved. I like that the general manager's involved, all the way down to the writers and the fans. I like that. I'm not a big fan of these super teams. I understand that some people do like them. That's their cup of tea. But, do you like that your team, you're able to grow organically with the organization as they rise through the ranks? That's my...
Yeah, I think there's something special about that. And I would say... even if you were to talk to some people off the record that have been around super teams, there's a certain thing that you lose when you watch somebody grow and mature. It was really special to watch Dwight Howard take the strides he made in, that first finals run. And then the second year come back and it's okay, I really know how to dominate now. And then that subsequent season where they made the run to the Eastern Conference Finals, take additional steps. It's one of the things to watch a Vooch who comes to a team that's just, been completely dismantled and, traded away a lot of its veterans and is completely turning a new leaf, go through, season after season of losing, but making incremental progress. And then, being there in Boston as the team clinches its first playoff berth in 6+ seasons and seeing that on his face, that he achieved that. There's something special to that, watching that, internal growth. And I think there does have to be a balance. It's really hard to hit every draft pick perfect. You look at even Oklahoma City, what they were able to do, they draft Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. And even with great internal growth, that team got one trip to the finals. That's just insane. You hit 3 MVPs, future Hall of Famers, and that's all you get from it. So that's really the balance to things. You have to, not only draft well and develop, you have to make a free agent acquisition, in today's NBA. And hopefully you can do that all while retaining players and proving that you have an internal culture. And that's what I think, brings a lot of people special and fond memories of that 2009 Magic Finals run, because it was a perfect balance of that. You had, guys like Jameer Nelson and Dwight Howard who grew with the team. You had a guy like Hedo Turkoglu, who wasn't a big free agent signing, but then blossomed when added to the club. And then you also had the big name free agent signing in Rashard Lewis, who was offered that huge max contract and comes in. So it was like a hybrid of all the perfect ways to cultivate a team. And I think, when you have that great mix, some special things can happen.
But it's not all about the ring, though. It's the journey and the story, right? That's what you're saying. Hey, we'll bring and people discard how great actually Turkoglu was.
Yeah.
I mean, people forget how integral he was to how that team worked. I mean, they almost ran through him. He was, if you want to argue, one of the first small point forwards.
Yeah.
No,
it's a great point. You look at he would both Richard and Turk were ahead of their time. It was like, Orlando was the unicorn of figuring out this way to play. Richard and Turk were both technically threes, and they were out there at the same time, and their size and length allowed them to do that. But in that particular season, it didn't start out that way. It was going to be this thing where like Tony Battie was going to be the 4, and one of them was going to come off the bench, and they were trying to figure it out. And it was actually the injury to Tony Battie that prompted Stan to play them that way. And they struck lightning in a bottle, and a lot of teams have played copycat since, but they were one of the first teams to play small. And it was really the sacrifice of Rashard Lewis to, at that time, like, it's easy to look at him now and go, oh yeah, that guy's a 4, because in today's NBA, it totally makes sense. But like, he was out there guarding 4s, like post up players who were banging him, backing down, like going against the KGs of the world, post up 4s, like, Al Jefferson, who couldn't jump over a phone book, but had like, a plethora of different post moves to really get you in foul trouble and go to work down low. So, there were all those guys in the league that, were more traditional 4s that aren't in there nowadays. And he was versatile enough to both defend them and then take, advantage of them on offense.
Go ahead, Liam, go shoot it.
Dan, I got 1 comment and 2 questions. First,
all
I
right.
definitely look older than I am. I'm only 22.
Yep.
You made the comment about Hedo Turkoglu and that shot against the Sixers. You really broke my 10-year-old heart. You really did. You brought me back, especially on the 2-year anniversary of Kawhi draining the shot over Embiid.
Rough day.
Rough day. All right. My first question. You work for the Magic. Do you also work for the Amway Center? Did you have any part in WWE Thunderdome?
So, no, I did not have any part in WWE Thunderdome. It's interesting with Amway Center because the way it was developed is it was, created in part with the Magic. We helped launch a lot of the Amway Center items. So like from their website to their then like app at the time. And then, we helped get the building built, and then we turned it over to the city. So, I was very involved with the building and events in the first year of the Amway Center's existence. And then after that, they now have a whole staff. It's like a completely different website, completely different app, as progress has been made over like the last decade.
Wow.
But, so I did have involvement in that at one period of time, but that in itself is you definitely need a full-time staff for that, because as you can imagine, all the different events, working with promoters, that was a crazy year. Going into getting that building built, I'll tell you that.
Wow.
Right. My second question, what would you recommend? Because you said you came out and you were working for CBS and you worked for NBA.com. What would you recommend for young, prospective writers, reporters, such as me, trying to get into the business?
Yeah, no, I would say, it's obviously such a competitive field, as it was explained to me when I was, first starting off. It's like working in the toy section of a department store. Like everybody wants to work there, because it's one of the most like fun areas. So I really think that gaining experience, and it's really hard to say this now, because of the way the world is, with COVID protocols, but like, being in position to build relationships with other people, because when there are staff openings, in these areas, so often, people that are hired have at some point crossed paths with another person. So anything you can do, and this is a great example of it, is, having this podcast and having different professionals on, there becomes an opening, in one of these departments. As you cross paths, more and more people who may know somebody or may be hiring that position, or, your 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon become closer and closer, you know, through that process. So that's why I think, like, you know, the more reps you could do in any way, shape, or form, the more you're around it, the better opportunity it gives you. You know, for me, when I was working at CBS Sports, you know, an opening became at NBA.com, and my boss happened to know somebody over there, and he was like, you know, stood by the work I did for him. So, you know, all those things help. And you never know, like, what you do that may give you an advantage. So, like, for example, the like totally weird thing that gave me a leg up when I went to NBA.com, other than knowing my boss, is they were really trying to grow. I don't know whether you call it social media now, but like the big things at the time were like SMS text, like getting score updates on your phone. That
Is everybody froze?
they wanted to that experience with cell phones. And then the other thing was they were doing this like fan voice blog, which was essentially like a very big message board. And I had helped, you know, a friend of mine build the message board, you know, from scratch, and he was running it in regards to the NFL. And, you know, I had just randomly, you know, when they were asking me questions, I was like, yeah, well, I did this. And, you know, part of the job back then was not only did you write for NBA.com, but you had to code up your own stuff, like stuff we take for granted now, like, you know, Drupal, WordPress, et cetera, make it so easy. You just kind of copy paste, select area where the photo goes, you could do it in your sleep. Back then you had to like hard code all these different areas. It would take like so long to just post an article. And then like even the generation of it, like getting to the website, like I remember the Seattle Supersonics, I could talk about them because they no longer exist. Like when you made one change to their website, you'd hit this like save, generate, and deploy button in the content management system, and it would take like 45 minutes for it to update. So when I was at NBA.com and we'd do something for them and I'd hit that button, you'd do 2 laps around the building, and then you know that so long story, you know, after that long story, basically, because I had this experience with doing message boards, that gave me an advantage because they were looking for somebody to help them with their NBA.com message boards as well. And so not only did I have writing experience, but I also had this message board experience because they thought that was like the future at the time. And, you know, obviously message boards had a great run before Twitter became, you know, the message board / instant update, everything all in one kind of social network.
Maybe we'll eventually go backwards. Like we should start wearing short shorts now.
Yeah.
Right? Like that might be a thing in like 15 years for writers to do. You don't know.
Yeah, no, everything, you know, it's funny because like things change, right? Like everybody's like, oh, radio's dying, but it really, like, radio reinvented itself, and it's like in podcasts now. Right. And like audio has a bigger reach than ever before. And that's kind of the same thing with like message boards, is they still technically like kind of exist. It's just in a different form in Twitter. So really, like all the elements, video, you know, audio, written content, all, you know, still has value. It's just the way that you consume them becomes kind of different and just easier to access.
Right. Liam there, first of all, Jack is the head of our fantasy sports. So he gets you any of that. Liam just got his credentials for the UFC and the Bellator fighting. And so I'm glad he asked that to you, because I've been trying to tell him that when you get into those meetings, that's where you get to meet people.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I'm a big UFC fan, so we could talk UFC. That's like Saturday nights. Fortunately, it's a night that, you know, there's not a lot of Magic games usually, so I'm able to watch a lot. And with the way the main cards hit at about 10 p.m., you could get good 3 hours of NBA watching in before the main part of the UFC card, you know, starts.
It's the best thing ever.
Yeah, it's great, and it goes so late, you know, till like 1 a.m. You know, on some of these, you know, bigger pay-per-views that aren't like all first 15-second knockouts like we had a few weekends back.
Yeah.
Or, you know, with guys breaking their feet or legs, you know.
Oh,
One guy won a fight by TKO without throwing a single blow. And that was like crazy to me that had never happened in the sport before, because another person, you know, went for a leg kick right off the bat and broke, bone.
He turned into Gumby.
Yeah, crazy.
I
was trying to think of like a non completely disgusting way to describe it.
I looked like I looked like Joe Rogan in my living room. I was like that. I've never seen anything like that in my whole entire life. Liam was texting me. He called it. I was like, there is no way, man. There is no way you called that ending.
It's crazy.
So if you don't mind, Dan, let's talk a little basketball then.
Yep.
So we got the playoffs are coming in, the playing games. First of all, let's talk playing games. Do you like it?
I do. To me, having been on both sides, I've been on, covering teams in championships. I've been covering teams that were fighting for, the first lottery ball, in the lottery. And to me, the biggest struggle, like if I were to be given one power as commissioner, is to try to eliminate meaningless games, having as few meaningless games as possible. And I say meaningless, like obviously they still carry weight for the players playing in them, and there's value to internal growth. But when I say that, like I mean meaningless in terms of standings, like NBA standings. So by having the play-in tournament, you have all these other teams that now have games that matter late into the season as a result of this tournament. And I think that's a great thing. I think the further you could expand that, the better. My grand idea has been that I would lock in teams 1 through 7 and then do March Madness in both conferences for that final spot. And then the team that wins that not only gets an entry into the playoff, but gets some sort of like increased lottery odds too. And I think that would eliminate some of the buyout issues that you perhaps see, hit the NBA a little bit. That would make some of these teams play more veterans later into the season rather than going completely to youth. So I think that you could really, go that far with it, because I think in this league, like when you look at it, like the team that's maybe like the 8th or 9th seed in a lot of these conferences could probably use a number 1 pick just as much as the team who's ranked all the way at the bottom. So, I don't think it's giving an over advantage to doing something like that, because at the end of the day, it would still be like a 15% odd anyway. So I think the play-in tournament's great. And, if I had any, if I were commissioner for a day, it would only be to expand it.
Right. So Dan, I've been making the point. So it's like, week 17, or I guess now it'll be week 18 in the NFL. You see it every year where there's teams who like, there's always a set of a game where they're playing each other and the winner's going to get in the playoffs and the winner's going to be out. It happened a few years ago in the NBA. It was specifically, it was Denver and the Jimmy Butler Timberwolves. And they literally game 82 of the year. It was the winner was the 8th seed and the loser was the 9th seed. I loved that because it's like, the last game of the season built into the season. So when you say eliminate meaningless games, could we somehow shorten the season without condensing the schedule to still get to the top 8 teams? Because if we're going to put 20 teams, 2/3 of the league into the into the possibility of a playoff, then games are games will just continue to become more meaningless unless we cut some out, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, here would be my counter argument for that. You wouldn't want to end up in the play-in tournament. Obviously, you'd want to be the 7th seed still, and you'd want to fight for that playoff positioning, because if you end up below 7, then you're trying to fight your way in. So you could still have those games you're talking about. They're just fighting for the 7th seed than what you traditionally believe was the 8th seed. And then you could give, obviously you'd have better seeding if you finished higher, being 8th versus being like the 12th team in your conference. You're playing weaker competition. So in the play-in tournament, in this figurative play-in tournament. So like even for those teams who are falling in the play-in tournament and they know that they're going to be there, they're going to still want to fight for that better positioning, because maybe you'd rather play, just say, for example, Detroit, then end up playing, a team like Charlotte. So you'd have this strategy that's going in. So just rather than like the teams 1 through 8, as was traditional, worrying about playoff seeding, you're literally having every team in the league worrying about some variation of seeding, whether it's, where they placing through that 1 and 7, or for the teams below that, where they're placing and seeding for this figurative playoff tournament. So, it kind of does away, like literally there is no, in terms of standings, meaningless game occurring because every game is affecting every team's seeding up until all the way through the end throughout the league. So that's just kind of, been my idea. I like to kick around whenever I'm given the platform to do it.
So if I actually like Dan, I don't like the play-in game, but I like your stipulation. Okay. I like your stipulation in regards to the draft. Okay, yeah. I don't like the play-in. I liken Charles Barkley's idea to the play-in game. Okay, it's these two losers against these two losers, and then they get to play another 1 seed. I don't know if you saw it on TNT. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, but and that's really essentially what it. But if we're talking for draft pick position, okay, because no rookie made a team instantly better. Ask the Pelicans. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, the Knicks got R.J. Barrett. They're better because of a guy who's been in the league for a couple years. You know that.
John Morant made the Grizzlies instantly better.
Not instantly better. They have team chemistry now. They're not instantly better. They're in a play-in game. They're not instantly better.
Rookie, they were instantly better.
They're a 9th seed. That's not instantly better to me.
They were the 8th. They got screwed by the bubble. They got screwed by the play-in. Instantly better.
I like this debate.
Instantly better. I mean, I wouldn't say instantly better. I would say, listen, if you jumped up incrementally, like the Suns are instantly better, right? Because of Chris Paul. I mean, that's a huge turnaround. No rookie has ever done what Chris Paul has done for the Phoenix Suns. That's a fact.
Well, no rookie's ever done what Chris Paul did for his actual rookie team on the Hornets either. Then they jumped 20 games.
Right, which lends to my argument. 20 games. Chris Paul's and that's another. Chris Paul is also like an outlier too. He's not the greatest of examples, but my whole point is that rookies don't make you better. So no one's going to try to tank games to get into those play-in games because they have a better team and they're going to play for a rookie. Like Dan was saying, they're going to try to get the 6th and the 5th and improve. And by the way, teams want revenue. They want TV time. And these play-in games are probably going to get bad time slots as well. As they should.
As it looks though right now for these play-in games, Washington right now is having their way with Atlanta. It's the third quarter. It's 89-76. It's only 1 minute left too. So if Washington wins, I believe they're in. They are into the play-in spot if they win tonight. Where do you see them going, Dan? How do you see Washington?
Washington's going to be one of those teams that nobody wants to face, just because they have two players who, when the game in the NBA playoffs NBA playoffs, it always becomes more of a half-court game. And so the more players you have in the playoffs that can create their own shot and create shots for others, you get an advantage. So to have Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, who could not only create for themselves, but also create opportunities for others on their team, puts them in a dangerous, makes them a dangerous team to play for the seed that they are. You don't expect a team that you're playing, when you're that good of a seed, to have two, potential Hall of Fame players on it that can put up some crazy numbers in the way that they do, because, and let's face it, they're playing better basketball now than they were at the beginning of the season. So,
So do the Wizards come out then?
I think it's going to be a hard road for them for sure, but they're just going to be one of those teams that you just don't want to play because they have two, game-changing players there that can create off their own shot. And, even if they're in the half court, they can find ways to be dangerous offensively.
And then that goes the same for the Lakers, right? Two dynamic players, both of them are there if they're both there, because they're gonna hand in that spot too. They're in the play-in games. Let's just say that now, because I know there's only like a 1 game difference, I think, in between them and not, but
could you imagine, being the 1 or 2 seed and having to end up playing the Lakers in the first round? That's a nightmare. That's just an absolute nightmare.
Isn't that what the NBA wants to see though, in a way?
Oh, I'm sure it's gonna. Hey, it's what I want to see. I don't even care about the league.
How about Lakers Warriors in the play-in game?
You already get a Western Conference Finals in the potential first round. It's great basketball.
Aren't you rooting for the Warriors though, because the Lakers kind of put this team together? Aren't you rooting for the little guy there?
Well, I just love that, like, even before the playoffs like really start, you could potentially see like Steph Curry and like LeBron fighting for position, of playoff games, and then you talk about the first round and end up playing one of those teams that's stacked and playing exceptional team basketball at the top of the Western Conference. So it's interesting. I love it. It's just going to be great basketball to watch. I'm going to spend way too much time doing that over the next couple.
So Liam there is a Sixers fan. So I know he's got something to say about those Wizards, and you just saying that about that number one. I know he's itching over there. Go for it, Liam.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty resigned to the fact that I'll be seeing the Wizards in the first round, and like you said, it's like kind of demoralizing, being the one seed. And hopefully the Sixers can clinch the 1 seed tomorrow, so I don't have to over your guys Orlando Magic in the final 2 games.
Yeah.
But it's so unfortunate that I'm going to be across the court from Russ and Bradley Beal in the first round. Now Russ is a total flame out come playoff time. A lot of times, especially when there's a lot of I don't want to say responsibility on his shoulders, like he will carry with this Wizards team who have no one else around him besides Beal, and Beal might not even play the first couple games of the series. Seeing how
that'll be the interesting part is if they catch that break, obviously, because then it'll I'm hoping that he could come around, because I think what they said, it was 2 games that he was guaranteed to miss. So I'm hoping for basketball pleasure standpoint that he's back in time for the playoff, because obviously that's a big game changer. If he's not, that's completely different story.
Look, I'm not excited. Like, facing Russ for a potential 7 game, I think we'll probably beat him in 5 or maybe 6 if the Sixers are slacking. But facing that kind of energy in the playoffs, like game in and game out, especially in round 1, is annoying. But I do have really pleasant visions of Matisse Thybulle and Ben Simmons just putting the clamps on those two, and I'm so excited for that.
No, it's one of those things that can almost work to a team like the Sixers' advantage if the confidence that a Thybulle, a Simmons can build off having a playoff series where you go against those 2 guys in the first round. You're already fine-tuned for your next series versus some of the teams that have cakewalks in the first round, and then they play a team that's perhaps been more challenged in their first round in that second round matchup, and then all of a sudden it takes a game or 2 to wake up. I would think that the Sixers, if they had to go through the Wizards, would already be fine-tuned going into that second round matchup. So once you come out on the other side of the thing, it can end up having its benefits.
I like that thinking.
Okay, guys, the crazy part is we've already been going for almost an hour, so that the way the time just flies. So I don't want to hold up Dan too much longer, but I do want to get into a little bit about the actual playoffs and who do we see coming out of it. Dan, who do you like in each conference?
Well, that's a good question. Like I always end up falling in love with certain teams, and the big team for me this year that I watched a lot of. It's easier to watch a lot of West Coast games for me because even, when the Magic finish up, and in this case, a lot of the time I'm working from home, it's easy to put on a Western Conference basketball game while I'm doing my work. And so, I've watched a lot of the Denver Nuggets this season. Jokic is having was having a crazy MVP year. And, the Jamal Murray injury devastated me because I thought that they were playing some, great team basketball and had enough versatility by, adding somebody like Aaron Gordon defensively to give them an asset that they desperately kind of needed with that squad. And, he would be very good. AG has always played his best defensive basketball against the best players. Like he's one of those guys that rises to the occasion. So going against, potential Kawhi Leonard or a LeBron, he's a real asset in those areas. So that one hurt. I think the 2 teams at the top are really exciting when you look at the way that Utah plays and the way that Phoenix plays. They're almost like perfectly constructed teams. They're very well balanced throughout the lineup. So it's going to be interesting to see if those very well balanced teams can, perhaps beat teams with more like traditional star power. You look at like, Kawhi and PG in LA, or whether it's, Anthony Davis and LeBron, should they, get that opportunity, to play one of those teams. That's going to be interesting to me is when you look at that is to see can the balanced teams with some star power, don't get me wrong, they have stars in their own right. I mean, Jokic could be, an MVP. You look at, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert in Utah, and you look at, Chris Paul and Devin Booker in Phoenix. But you would say that the other teams have more like traditional star power, but are like a little less, I don't want to say balanced, but just not as constructed in unison. Whereas those like, I look at the Suns and Jazz, and they're like almost perfect puzzle pieces. Like every piece kind of makes sense from a basketball standpoint. So it's going to be interesting to see those kind of things collide come playoff time and how that balances out for me.
Well, for one, Dan, you just made me a bigger fan of yours than I already was, because self-disclosure here, I am a huge Nuggets fan. I'm from Denver originally, so I mean, I've been a Nugget fan since David Thompson. So to hear you talk like that just rubs it in these two guys' face over here. So, that just makes it all that much better. But Jack, who do you like coming out of the West?
Well, I'll tell you what. For a long time, we sat here and we talked about, could Phoenix, could Utah. I think we're at the point where you sit there and you're like, it's either Phoenix or Utah. I know people like the Lakers, but they're inconsistent. The Clippers put together a nice team, and a couple weeks ago they were looking good again. I just don't see the consistency. I think at the end of the day in the West, like Dan was saying, it's going to be the teams that have played together the most. The very organic teams coming out of the West, and unfortunately, in the East, I think you're going to see the horse that is Brooklyn Nets kick when it's perfect. I think the Nets are going to just have enough, and it's going to be an organically built team in the West, which I'll be rooting for, against a Brooklyn Nets manufactured team, which I don't very much like. I just, again, the ring might be shiny, but the journey doesn't tell me a story that I like to read.
I hear you. Liam?
If it's either Utah or the Suns, Jack, you're telling me that the Lakers are taking out one of those two in the first round. So you're telling me that once the conference finals rolls around, that the Clippers or the Lakers aren't going to take out the other one of those? Because I think that's going to happen. I think it's probably going to be the Lakers. I agree with you on the Nets. I haven't wavered on the Nets. I can't get too high on my Sixers. You can never get too high on Philadelphia sports. It'll eat you alive as a fan.
Especially in the playoffs.
It's Nets, Lakers, and Paul. As much as you love rubbing stuff in my face when the Nuggets go home in the first round, I'll be right here for you.
First round.
I mean, actually, for me, I believe that too. I mean, I love the Nuggets, and everything Dan said was correct. But we all know too, in the playoffs, they're going to clamp Jokic like never before. They're gonna have a plan for him, and then they're gonna make the other guys beat him. And if Aaron Gordon can step up like I know he can play, like I've seen him play, then the Nuggets have a chance. But otherwise, Murray hurt them because he gave them that little something, and that two-man game with him and Jokic that they play is so, they've got it down so perfect right now at this stage of their game that was a big component for them to lose, even though they have the star power that they have. So I'm with you right there. But on the East side, I have to say I'm not a Nets believer either, but only because I don't believe in the turning the switch on thing. So if they would have been together, even for the last 9 games, if they would have been together for some kind of time to put a little something together, I could buy the Nets. But to just say we're going to walk into the playoffs, we're going to turn it up, and you're going to beat a team like Milwaukee, or I'll give Philadelphia credit too. Maybe Doc can have that effect on them as well. But you're not going to just walk in, I don't think, and beat either one of those teams just by flipping that switch. So for me, the East, I would give the Bucks actually a nod. But
Oh, okay. The Bucks aren't bad either. Dan, I want to ask you a question real quick because I've run this through my book a couple times. I think that I don't believe that Boston's going to stay fully together this offseason. I think there needs to be a split between Brown and Tatum. I don't know whether they believe it or not, or maybe Marcus Smart needs to go somewhere. But I think Jaylen Brown in Orlando, or even a Marcus Smart in Orlando, would be worth 10 to 15 wins. Would you be excited if they came to town?
Yeah, I have trouble like commenting on that, and then honestly, because like legally as working for the team, that would be considered tampering.
I just want to ask if you like a thumbs up or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought about it.
So no, but I think the tough part from the Celtics standpoint, like to just answer your question from that, is like it becomes really hard to evaluate a team when a player goes down from injury like that before the playoffs even start, to really know where you are. Because like obviously if you're Boston, you'd love to watch this go through the postseason and see where it really played out. Whereas like now it's really hard to make a move of significance like that, where you're doing it when a player's, injured and you don't really get to see it play out come the playoffs. And I think the other things that teams are really going to evaluate this is like the bubble and this COVID year are different years. Like it's really hard to take these away and have huge, big takeaways from your team. So if I were, a GM, I would have, and this is just speaking in generalities, I would have a real tough time making like a major move based off what I've seen from this particular season, where there's been like no practice time. So like players that are normally good practice players and grow a lot, and teams that are good practice teams, they lose one of their superpowers and weapons. Teams, they're not preparing the same way for these games. So it's an odd year for me to really make big takeaways, because like the playoffs is going to be the first time where we get to see teams really have like practice time, really get to focus on an opponent, like play more a traditional way, be in a city for, a reasonable amount of time. Maybe, with vaccine numbers, we'll see like protocols change, I'm not sure about that yet, but like, so it would be tough for me, for any team, just speaking generally, to make a major move where I'm moving a potential all-star player based off of, maybe struggles in a season like this.
Yes,
So-
that's fair.
So I think it's funny. So the Celtics to me kind of like compare in a way to like the Blazers, and except like the two star wings are the Blazers' 2-star guards, and like have they run their course together? Even their timelines are kind of similar. Like CJ's ascension, they've been star duos, 4 or 5 years now, the two of them. Could you point it to coaching? Because I think Terry Stotts has kind of reached his limit there, and it almost seems like Brad Stevens is kind of reaching his limit as far as the messaging is concerned. Is the conference finals the bar for both of them? Because Portland made it a couple years ago. I mean, I know Boston's made it 3 of the last 4 years, but in the lesser conference, obviously, is it a messaging thing with these teams who have 2-star players who can get to the third round of the playoffs or the playoffs every year, but can never ever get over the hump no matter what?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Like I said, kind of the same thing for coaching. It'll be interesting to see, how Brad does in the postseason, just because obviously he's going to be a little limited with what's in his arsenal now. But like, the way I just look at it here in Orlando, like Steve Clifford was such a great practice coach that, over his 2 seasons here in Orlando, you just saw the team throughout the year continue to get better and make incremental growth. And that's why the Magic had great second half runs in both, their first season under Clifford and then their second season prior to the haltage in Orlando, even with dealing with some crazy injuries, because, that's the markings of a great coach. He gets the team prepared and at the same time, helps them build throughout the year. In this year, you just don't get the opportunity to do that. So again, just like with players, I really have a hard time, especially when it comes with coaches that have had some great success over the course of their career making any decisions based off of like the bubble in this particular season.
All right. Well, Dan, I don't want to keep you much longer, but we do have a brand new segment where we're going to do the last word for each person. And since this is our first time and we have such a distinguished guest there, Dan, do you want to give us a last word?
Ooh, last word. Geez, that's an interesting one. I got to make it a good word. But I guess if I'm just talking, topics here, because we didn't touch on it, and I'll give it. It's like the for some people the NBA season's coming to an end if you're a fan of certain teams. But as you know, Paul, because I saw you on the conference call, it's an exciting time for some organizations with the start of the NBA 2K League coming on May 19th with the tip-off tournament. So this league has really fascinated me. Like, to be completely honest, like when it was thrown at my plate as something that I would be covering in its first season, I was like, what is this? This is like, bizarre. And, I've fallen in love with it over the course of the season. It's really interesting, the dynamics with these players, because it's 6 guys, 5 of them who are playing, throughout the course of the game, with each position on the court, going against 5 other guys from another organization. And the one real interesting, thing about their dynamic is like these guys are almost like living with each other at the same time they're playing. They're like put up in, apartments right next to each other. So it's almost like this real world gaming experience meets the NBA. Like it's all these kind of things mixed in together. And like there is a real diehard NBA 2K League community of passionate fans, players who didn't make the league but still play these guys and like off time, and have played against them in tournaments and pro-ams that are wanting to fight their way into the league the next season. They're watching all the games, they're commenting, like not only watching these games, but it happens in Twitch, so you could see like real live chats and like other players of other teams are commenting on the games. Like it's a crazy community, and it's become a lot of fun. And so the season,
a lot of NBA stars are getting in that too, right? I mean, a lot of these NBA players and the NBA, they're all in that, getting into that league as well, right? It's different type of tournaments that they hold. And
so there's usually some like off-season tournaments or stuff throughout the year. They did a little bit with COVID, where they'll kind of like mix in and do some stuff. But like once the games actually count, it's the 6 players that the teams have drafted versus the other 6 players, and the games are highly competitive because with a lot of these tournaments, there's prize money associated with it. There's big difference in what you can earn if you win in the playoffs, if you win a championship. So they are highly competitive games. It's interesting with them commenting on each other's games. It's a real small, growing community. And so it's a lot of fun. So the Magic season will end with their final game against the Sixers on the 16th. And Magic Gaming will tip off in the tip-off tournament on May 19th. And then their first regular season game will happen the following week. I think it's like the 26th. I have to double check that. But yeah, so literally it's like 3 days and then it goes into the next thing. So that's exciting too. It's a lot of fun to watch. And I encourage anybody who hasn't given it a chance yet to take in a few games, watch it on Twitch, follow along with the comments, and pretty soon you'll kind of be hooked like I was.
And you cover all of that as well, right? You'll be all with Magic Gaming as well throughout the whole season for them?
It really takes place just like a regular team. Like, as soon as the game ends, there's a Zoom call with the coach and one of the players. It's really traditional. It's just a little different watching a video game structure. And they changed the structure of the gameplay this year that like, you'll play a team and you'll play them twice back to back. So for example, like if your first game was against, the Raptors gaming, squad, you would play them and you would play them at 8 and 9. And then post game for both games would happen after that 9 o'clock game. So you could have a 1-1 split. You could have swept a team. There's a lot of different dynamics. And then you'd have the post game for that. And so we'll write recaps about all those games. There'll be post game interviews and all that stuff that we'll do for magicgaming.nba.com.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is I really wanted to get into that a lot more because I've been ever since then I've got to look more into it, and there's a couple of other players and things that are coming up here soon that's going to be.
Yeah. Well, I'll do you a favor, Paul. If you want to talk to him, I'll get in touch with our gaming coach. Maybe have him hop on one of these things because, like,
Oh, I love him too. He is
like I am serious when I say this. Like, you know, you mentioned me, like my passion for the game. You could see that, like when you talk to the gaming coach, I assure you 100%, you will see that passion, like within the first 5 seconds to talk to the guy. He can sell you on it and make you into it. Talking to him after every game is just a pleasure because he, again, so open and honest, like with what was going on with the team, win or lose, like just clear into what's going on. And I think Magic Gaming, like, and I'm being dead serious about this, has one of the best coaches in the entire 2K league. Like that guy is a special asset and, really fun to talk to. And I would put his league knowledge up against anybody, the commentators, whatever. Like he knows the ins and outs of everything. So he's a lot of fun to talk to and cover.
Well, first of all, I'm going to hold you to that because I mean that would be great to have him. I love watching him, and he's also the general manager. So he's the general manager and he's the coach.
This will be his first season in that role, like having the title. Now, for me, who's covered it, he hasn't had that title before. But he's done a lot of the responsibilities of it in the course of the season. So it's a title that he certainly earned because he puts in, since he's been here, he's had a heavy say in the draft and how the teams kind of approached what I would call like the free agency window, even though it's like a retention window. It's really interesting but that's a whole nother hour.
Yeah, we might have to have you back, Dan, and we'll go into a whole 2K.
Yeah, I'll be happy to hop on with Jonah. Just
here
listening.
Man, that would be great because the one thing that I did get from him that day too was that passion, the way that he talks, the way that he got me into it. It was at that moment where I started digging into everything about it. And like I said, there's a couple of things coming up later on this summer that are going to be pretty big in the 2K2 that we are going to be involved with. And so it's going to be really, really cool to see that league go and to get involved with that league. Anybody got any questions about the 2K? Because I did forget to go there, Dan, Liam, Jack, Liam.
I don't have any. I mean, I don't have any questions. I might partake. I might start playing. I used to play a lot.
Played a little 2K in the day.
Yeah, I just say give it a shot. It's one of those things. It's going to be interesting this year. They're doing a lot of things to grow the game, and once the league gets to the point where they're not doing like this remote play anymore and they're doing a lot of tournaments in the cities, having experience when the 2K league came to Orlando for a tournament that they had 2 seasons ago at the Fortress at Full Sail University, the atmosphere of watching these guys game right across from each other and talk smack and like stand up, it was special. And I think that's really where the future of the league has to be, is like having these traveling tournaments, because you attend one of those and you'll have different feelings about the league. I assure you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I appreciate that for sure. I appreciate you bringing that up because that totally went by me with all that we got into with the basketball. I'm kind of like you. You start talking basketball, I can go on forever and ever. But so I do appreciate that. And for sure, maybe if we can get him and we can get you back, that would be great to have the both of you two. That would be one heck of a show, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Liam, you want to go up next, man? You got a last word for us?
Yeah, UFC 262 this Saturday is going to be a lot of fun. Charles Oliveira versus Mike Chandler for the vacant light heavyweight title that Khabib Nurmagomedov retired and gave up. It's the classic jiu-jitsu grappler submission artist versus the heavy striker, but the heavy striker can fare on the ground as well. It's an interesting matchup. It should be a lot of fun. Also, Congrats to Carmelo, top 10 NBA scorer all time.
Forgot about the jersey today.
That's a great last word.
Jack?
The NFL schedule came out today. I don't know if anybody was paying attention, but
Oh, yeah.
we are just a few weeks away from fantasy football ranks. I'm starting to get really excited. Dan, I don't know if you play. Liam, I'm sure you get involved. I know Paul plays. It's really starting to ramp up. We're excited about it. Here at EDF, our play-in games. I think the Wizards beat the Pacers. I don't think the score goes to 295 points this time. Hornets upset the Celtics. Lakers take the Warriors, and I actually believe that Popovich in one game will figure out how to beat the Ja Morant-led Grizzlies, and we'll date back to this.
All right. For me, I'm going to do a nice little short one. Dan, I appreciate you coming on. The Magic is a great organization. There's nothing in the world I can say bad about that place. Those guys have treated me with probably more respect and more courtesy than I probably deserve sometimes. But so I just have thoroughly enjoyed them, and I enjoy listening to you, the way you can come up with a question when they're on a 6-game losing streak and it's the same thing over and over, and they come in and Cliff sits down and Dan's always the first one to get that question out, to get him rolling. And man, that's a harder job than it looks, because I could not do the first ones like you do all the time in those situations. I don't know what to say to him, So you lost again. It's tough. So, I mean, I appreciate the work that you do, and I appreciate you coming on today. And remember, everybody, this is sponsored by EDF Sports. So go check us out at theeverydayfan.com, and we will have some more special guests coming along, and hopefully soon we'll have the gaming coach for the Magic Gaming, and that would be really nice. And so I appreciate everybody coming on today. I appreciate the show as always. Check us out at theeverydayfan.com. Thank you guys for coming.
Dan, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Nice to meet you, man.
Seeing you.